Good morning, students. As some of you would know from reading my recent Connect notice, I'm not going to be in this week. So each lesson there'll be either a recording like this, or I may even do a WebEx from tomorrow onwards, just depending on how I'm feeling. So today what we're going to do is explore section 1 of the exam. So in preparation for today's lesson, I need you to have a number of things ready to go. So firstly, it would be good to have this PowerPoint downloaded if you have your device. Further, if you go to Connect and then go to your page, you'll see that I've got a notice here for today's lesson. So if you open that up, you'll see I've also got a link to a site that you'll need a bit later on. But if you go to the content section, and it will take you straight to the exam prep page. I'll just change that so it doesn't go straight there. If you go to exam review, in here you've got the PowerPoint that I'm looking at right now, but you've also got the semester 1 exam markers comments. So this is just taken from my comments for section 1 with averages, for example, for each question. So just have that handy. So if we look then back at the PowerPoint about what we're going to do today, for this lesson I'll instruct you when to stop and pause. The video here will only go for 15 minutes maximum, but the content I've got planned should take the whole lesson, so bear with me today. So what you need for today's activity is you will need a copy of the ETA WA exam paper, as well as section 1, your booklet for section 1. So if the relief teacher hasn't organised that, it is on my desk in the English office, so send someone to go get that now. So you only need section 1 and the English ETA exam booklet. So today we're going to look at reviewing section 1 and just doing a bit of a feedback review. So we're not going to be able to do all sections because it's just going to be really tricky to sort of navigate the other sections this week, given that I haven't seen the composing or the responding. So I've got the feedback for the responding, and your results for the composing should be inputted by the end of today. So I will upload your final exam score by the end of today. I have got the section 2 and the results for that are looking very pleasing at the moment, so that's good news indeed. So we're going to continue looking at then some of the steps we need to take when deconstructing unseen texts. Now, the reason we're focusing on this is because the next task that we have, which is scheduled for week 9, is a short answer again. So we're going to be continuing on with this so that it will help you prepare for that in week 9. And then last thing we're going to do is, as a trio, you're going to look at some samples and look at your own samples as well as the marking key, and you are going to create a perfect answer. And by perfect answer, I mean a 10 out of 10 for one of the questions that you are assigned. So let's continue on. So a few activities today, lots of review, a roundtable review, and then some independent writing towards the end. So our question of the session today is, what steps should we take when deconstructing unseen texts? So the first thing I want you to do, and I'm going to get you to pause the video in just a second, is I want you to get the exam in front of you, and I want you to read the entire exam again. And what I want you to consider is that if you were to write a question for each section of the exam, I want you to write one and write a question that you could have answered really well. Okay, so maybe use the post-it notes that are in the teacher's drawer and create a question that you believe you could have answered really well for each section. So this will give you an indication of the types of syllabus concepts that you feel really comfortable with, or the syllabus concepts that you really prepared for. So I'll just get you to pause the video there for now. Okay, so I'm always just interested to know what it is that you feel most comfortable with. So hopefully that sort of got you thinking about what your strengths were in the lead up to the exam. But now I just want us to think about what worked and what didn't. Again, we can only focus on section 1 at the moment because that's the one that I have handy. So I'll ask the relief teacher if they could hand back section 1 papers. And then what I want you to consider is with the feedback that you're given. I marked this section. You know that the marks are out of 10. The marking guides that we use are the ones provided by ETAWA. They aren't necessarily the best, but they just give a rough indicative mark. With exam marking, it is impression marking, meaning there's very little annotation, and it is done relatively quickly, but again, ranked. So one thing I want you to consider is I want you to make any notes that you have for each question or each mark or any anomalies that you weren't expecting. I want you to put any comments that you have on a post-it note and just put Q1, Q2 or Q3 next to it. Now, just a word of advice, remember that when I'm marking these, I'm not marking a one-off piece. I'm marking all 38 the cohort at once. So, you know, it's not marked in isolation. So you're going to be looking at your paper in isolation, whereas I'm looking at it across 38 other papers. So just keep that in mind. However, if you do feel you have a query or a response, just make a note of it, okay? I'm more than happy to look back over it when I return. But what I want you to do now is just pause this video and make a note of any questions or any queries that you have about the marks that you were awarded. And then following that, we're going to have a look at the good answer guide. So if you just pause the video here for a moment, that would be perfect. Welcome back. Hopefully now you've had a look at your responses. So what we're going to look at now is the good answer guide. So at the end of this lesson, I'm wanting a reflection from each of you using the Flipgrid model. We haven't used this before in class, but it is a really handy tool that I can use to sort of assess and get an understanding of how you feel post section 1 and post exam. So at the close of this lesson and with everything you've learnt after we've gone through this few good answers and the marking guide, I want you to come back to this slide, scan this QR code, or alternatively click this link here, and this will take you to a web page like this, where it just gets you to think about some reflection questions pertaining to section 1. So on your device, all you need to do is click add response, and what will happen is you'll be directed to add a video response. If you go here, you just click allow, add a video response a video response reflecting on those questions that appeared before there. So I'll just get back out of that now. So the questions were, use the space to tell us about how you think you went in section 1. What are some goals to keep working towards in the next few weeks, especially knowing that we've got that upcoming section 1 assessment task. And then what support you need exactly. So that would be something for you to consider at the end of this lesson, and don't stress, I'll remind you. I've also got a notice and that link, those same links here in this notice here. So if you click on that, it will take you straight there. If we head back to this PowerPoint though, okay, what I would like you to do now is in your group or in your groups, I'd like you to divide it into just 3. So each person will be responsible for a question, okay? So however the relief teacher or yourselves can arrange this, I want there to be an even distribution amongst the class of groups who look at question 1, groups who look at question 2, and groups who look at question 3. So just pause the video here so that you can arrange that now. Excellent. So now that we've returned, what I want you to consider is the first thing we need to do, as I always rabbit on about, is engaging prior knowledge. So more important than any other section, we really need to sort of ascertain what it is we already know about the text, the genre, and any other contextual factors. So in your groups, what I want you to do is I want you to list as many points, as many ideas, as many things that come to mind when you read the contextual notes for each section. So the contextual notes are as follows for each question here. So text 1, text 2, text 3. So what I want you to consider is not only things such as date, but also anything you know or anything that you might think that the text will be about based on genre, based on date, based on particular words that you're seeing. And this is going to help structure and frame your reading. So if you pause this video now for 4 minutes and just collate as many ideas as possible. Okay, so now that you're back, I just want you to think about everything you discovered there. And I just wanted to think about how this influences your reading. Does it frame your reading at all? So does the contextual notes add to your reading? And I think it really should here. So if you're looking at the genre, we know that one of them is a work of historical fiction, one is very revisionist in nature, as in a reflection and revisiting a text, and the third one is clearly indicated as a form of nature writing. You can see then the purpose of each text, one to be to entertain, one to educate, and one to promote. Moving forward, you can sort of get a sense of the audience here in all three in terms of the war genre lovers. That is a particular market within an Australian publication and Australian publications. But we've also got something more directed at naturalists and nature lovers in that third text. The context gives us a bit of information in terms of the situational and cultural context of production, and then if so, there any other information or details that you can extract from that, from those contextual notes, please write them down. So something you need to consider as we move from the contextual notes to actually reading of the text is that you need to just ask yourself, these are those questions we always ask ourselves as we approach the text. What do we think the main ideas of the text are? How does the text represent people, places, and events? What are the main generic and language conventions? And we know from question 1 is a focus particularly on structure. Can we make those observations between this and other forms of texts? And then what role does our context play in understanding these texts and our response to the texts? So by considering these questions here, we're really developing a more considered reading of those texts. So what I want you to do now is, depending on which question you assigned yourselves, I want you now to reread the texts. So I want you to read and actively read, meaning you have your pen and highlighter in hand. The questions now will really guide what it is that you're going to be highlighting. So have a look at the questions. We should be breaking them down and deconstructing them for the 4 C's. And then really from there, you should be actively highlighting the text to sort of find the best evidence, okay? The best evidence that's going to support your reading of the text. So please spend some time doing that now. Okay, so students, we're down to our last couple of minutes. So after you've read that, I know a lot of you will be kicking yourself. It's always the case. You'll be going, oh, why didn't I see that there when in the exam situation? Remember, we do mark these as first drafts. So what I would like you to do now is have this marking comment, or the exam markers comment, displayed. And I want you as a class just to sort of scroll through looking at the particular comments as it pertains to the whole text, and then go down to the individual comments for each question. You'll see that I've given a mean as well as the high and low for each question, and you will get a sense of what was rewarded and what exactly it was we were looking for. I'll make more comments about this in the next lesson, and hopefully that lesson will be live. Following this, I want you to go back to the PowerPoint and look at particular things pertaining to language features versus structure, if you did question 1. Question 2, if that was what you were assigned, have a look at the sample response. So this was a sample response taken from one of our students, and I want you to consider what advice you would have for this student. Have they comprehended the text, remembering that this is what the question is about, and this is what this whole section is about? Have they comprehended it, and what they could have done to increase or improve that response? In question 3, again, go to the specific advice offered in the markers comments for further advice, but question 3 was done quite well if we compare question 3 to the other responses. So what I would like you to consider is, by the end of this lesson, as a team, using what you've learnt from here, as well as the markers report, I want you to create a perfect answer. Now, some people in this class are very close to perfection, so they don't really have to do much, but I want you to read the marking key carefully and type up and email me a response. The last thing to do is to go back to what I asked at the start and scan this code and record a video response answering the outline questions. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.